You are listening to the Airline Selection Podcast, where we bring you insights to help you succeed at airline selections. This podcast is brought to you by Airline Selection Program. Please welcome your host, airline captain and major airline recruiter, Guillaume Debauchez.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Airline Selection Podcast, where we bring you insights and tips and advice from our experts that will help you with your pilot career in general and, of course, for your airline pilot selection. I have Dana with me today once again. Dana, how are you doing today?
Hi, Guillaume. Thank you. I'm doing fine. How about you? Are you excited for our new episode?
I am. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, let me tell you about our topic. So today we're going to talk about certain mental shortcuts. We call these cognitive biases, and we are going to have a look at how these work when pilots are at work. So let me just tell you a little bit more about these so that we are on the same page. So as I mentioned, these cognitive biases, these are basically mental shortcuts that we use. Everyone uses them. They're part of our everyday life. And we just want to make sure that we understand the world with as much information as possible. But of course, we don't have all the information all the time. So how do we make sure that we can make accurate decisions based on these? So I would say that when we have a cognitive load, when we have a lot of things to focus on, then we use these kind of shortcuts because they just make it easier for us to make sense of the world. So we wrote an article about this one, and just to let you know a couple that we have talked about here, basically we can talk about biases that, let's say, we can focus on important information that supports already our world view, and we discard everything that doesn't support it. Or for example, let me think, there was also when we stuck to a situation, even when it no longer serves us, we have better alternative. So these kind of things, we did talk about these in the article, but let me just ask you a question about these. What do you think when pilots are flying under pressure? Do you think that they make better or faster decisions?
Well, when you are under pressure, why would you be under pressure? It could be maybe during pre-flight because you are getting late for one reason or another. Maybe it's a busy pre-flight. Maybe the pre-flight was busy and you had a slot, and you know that if you miss that slot, you are going to have a problem, a bigger problem later on. Or a situation could happen on a flight that means that maybe you're going to have to change the course of the flight and divert, which is rare, let's face it. But what happens more commonly is you get pressure on the approach. The closer you get to the ground and you discover your destination, the level of traffic around you, and maybe there could be a change of approach, a change of runway, a change of weather conditions all of a sudden, like some rain that comes in that wasn't planned, or storm cell that has moved. And these can induce, of course, the fact that you are going to have to make a decision fairly quick. And the quality of your decision depends on the time available. So if you have limited time to make a decision, you are not able to take all the parameters that you would if you were nicely sat in an office and had several hours. So you will make what we call inside advanced interview course a good enough decision. And that's actually all that is expected from you. You know, you're not Superman. You cannot make the best decision. You're not ChatGPT being able to make a pretty good decision in 1 second. But we're human. We need to make human decisions. So that's the short answer. The thing is, because of this, we train quite a lot to be able to anticipate types of situations that could happen. And if something new happens, well, we're able to quickly stick to something that we have encountered before, trained or rehearsed or thought that could happen. And we are going to use the model of this pre-made decision and then adjust to the specific parameters of the day in order to go quickly on the frame and then adjust. And the threat happens when you do this, and this is great because it means you've prepared, But the problem is maybe what you thought could happen when you rehearsed one day, maybe before the sim, you had something and you thought, oh, this could happen. So let me document this in my little notebook of possibilities. And then it happens on the line a year later. And then you forget that today is a different day. And yes, it was good to save time with what you'd prepared, but you forget to insert today's parameters in it. And this is when problems happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. As you mentioned that these, we can call them biases, and
Biases.
maybe that has a little bit of a negative connotation, but they are actually very, very useful, just as you said. Like we have been using it for our survival for so many years and thousands of years. And our brain really loves predictability, and this is something that it really helps us with it to make, as you did you say good enough judgment, or what was
It's a good enough decision.
Decision.
A lot of
I
people
really
think
love
you have
that
to make
one.
the best decision, but if your time is limited, you can't. And if you try and make the best decision and you can't, well, either you make another decision or you're going to freeze. That's a big risk. If people are perfectionists to the point and that if they don't make the perfect decision, they're not going to decide anything, that's a safety hazard, really. So you have to be comfortable with making a good enough decision that is just safe.
Yes,
right?
yes, that's true. Yeah. And actually, I just wanted to ask you, so, okay, these are very useful in our everyday life and
Yes.
also in our work. But what do you think, or maybe we can think about this together, about this question, why do these persist, even that maybe we are well aware that these things are happening to us? Because I think part of it, or you can also say if you want to start.
Yeah, I was going to say that confirmation. We're talking about biases here, and this is a CRM concept. They are all part of a CRM concept that all pilots will be trained on. Confirmation bias is the one that we are talking about now. It's confirming something. We see something and we try and confirm it with the bias of something that we've seen before. This is what we've been discussing for the last few minutes now. And you said that the term bias is seen under a negative light. And yes, it is, because if this bias leads to an unhealthy situation, an unwanted situation, then it's a problem. So that's why we are trained to be aware that it happens. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't use confirmation. We shouldn't use pre-framed models at all, because they actually save us a lot of time. Okay, so let's not prevent ourselves from using what we have already built in our experience model. And anyway, even if we wanted to, we wouldn't be able to. Of course, we use our training, which is a form of pre-made model already, and then we add experience to it. The point of the CRM training around confirmation bias is to be aware that when you've seen something that looks like something else, well, you cannot necessarily make the same exact decision as the last time. You need to make sure and be aware that you could be making big interpretation errors this time, and that not everything is the same. Insert the right parameters into your pre-made scenario, or at least the frame of that scenario, in order to come to something that is optimal.
Yes. Well,
Make sense?
as you said, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that we always encounter different kinds of situations, and it's very good if we can just try to apply the same structure or solution to different situations, but we cannot always do that. For example, if there is time pressure in one situation or in the other, there isn't, I think then biases can really persist. Because, well, in aviation, there are a lot of situations when things move fast, and then we have to make a very quick decision under pressure. And of course, the pressure, the stress, it also just adds to it. So we are also looking for kind of like a shortcut, because the stress, it narrows our cognitive field of vision, I could say. It really just focuses on what you think matters the most.
Yes, and also, we all know that, well, if you're very new to aviation, you maybe don't know, but the stress is like a curve like that. So the stress is useful, because if you don't stress, that's stress, and then there's performance. So as you stress, your performance goes up, in fact, because if you're completely relaxed, you have no performance. But come a point, if your stress is too much, then your performance goes down dramatically, like on a cliff. So the idea is to remain on the good side of stress and remain focused, like in the zone, really. And the idea here, and one of my mentors often said, hurry slowly. It means that to not get into a state of panic where you have the stress of the situation and you've got some self-induced stress to act immediately. The idea is to still do things deliberately and in a good sequence, and to hurry slowly, because that's the best way. If you hurry fast, what you're going to do is you're going to be inefficient. You're gonna drop your pen. You're gonna press the wrong button. You don't want that. You want to do things deliberately, and that's the best way to do things efficiently. If that makes sense,
Yes.
if that makes sense, right? So when
Oh,
you're in a
yes.
situation like that, you go, okay, it's always the same on the plane, right? You aviate, navigate, communicate. Of course, if you're on the ground, it's you don't need to aviate because you're on the ground, but you will make sure that the airplane's safe. You'll make sure of the level of automatization that you have is adequate. You'll take toll of the situation, and then you'll make a good enough initial decision that's going to protect the operation, whilst maybe you run a checklist, or while maybe you make a decision. Another decision with having taken a bit more time, okay? Because not every situation, like we said at the beginning, not every situation is a failure. It can just be an unforeseen, a runway change or something like that. You arrive into an airport that you know, they've got a runway that they were using, and they're changing runways, and now you anticipate that you're going to have this type of approach, and so you plan for that in your mind, but in fact they give you a different type of approach still. So now you can have two changes in a row. This is where you need to be very deliberate in your actions so that you don't waste your efforts. And for this, you will have techniques that you should have rehearsed, that you know how to quickly reset an approach, how to brief your colleague, how all of this you can have rehearsed. And the more you do, the more efficient you are, and the better it is. But it doesn't mean that you are going to assume that everything is going to be the same on that day. Okay, maybe your airplane's heavier today. Maybe the weather is very hot and you have less performance. Maybe there is a tailwind, and maybe there could be another runway change, or maybe, the parameters of today are not those of another time.
Yeah. So if I understand it correctly, you're saying that it's actually a little bit going into the what can help in this kind of situation topic. But if I understand you right, then you're saying that what can really help pilots in this case is, first of all, experience, or just putting yourself out there and gathering more experience in this, and also to talk with other people. So let's say if I think that I have a confirmation bias, what I could maybe say is that instead of saying this looks fine, right, I can just ask the other person, what do you see here? Is that kind of what you mean?
Yes. Well, one way to do this would be to do this at the threat management level. Normally, when we do briefings, we talk about threats. Some airlines will talk about threats before starting the briefing, some of them after the briefing. It depends on the manufacturer's guidance. Anyway, at some point there is a threat-based briefing, which should be a discussion. What threats do you see today? And the other person will respond. Well, that's all well and good when it's in a structured briefing phase, such as during pre-flight or before descent. But what if something happens in the middle of the descent? Okay, so the idea is to do what many airlines call a mini brief. Something's changed, okay, and go, okay, you deal with the situation and you can go, okay, now that there's always a time when you have a bit of space, even if the situation requires, is quite stressful and fast moving. There's always a time where you're waiting to get on base, and you have base is like, when you're waiting to get onto fine before going on final, maybe there you're going to have 2 minutes where nothing happens because you do need to travel to the point where you're going to get on final. Maybe there could be a time to go and I use this a lot, go, okay, now we got a bit of time. Did we forget anything? Let's do a mini brief. What are the new threats? Okay. Did we confirm everything that we had to for this specific situation? For me, I always said, did we forget something? And I want you to think. And then the other person goes, oh yeah, we forgot the approach checklist. Okay, let's do the approach checklist. Anything else? Okay, and then this refocuses the mind. I would do
Yeah,
this
I think that
personally, and that's my technique. It's not SOP, but I would do this also at the end of the taxi. So we would get the plane going, and the preparing the plane is one of the things I preferred because there's so much variability, and it's really like a game of Tetris. It's really interesting. But then when we have this phase of quiet as you finish the taxi, I would always go, did we do everything we had? Did we forget anything? Can you think of something we should have done? And then the person would normally go, no, it's okay. Or they'd go, oh, actually, yes, look, we said that we would inform the cabin about something, or we said that we would do this and we forgot. Great, let's do it.
Yeah.
These
And
are
for
little
that, you
techniques
also.
that you will build as you go.
Yeah,
You'll see your
yeah,
captains do it, and then you'll go, oh, I like his way of doing it. Okay, I'll do it for myself. I didn't invent this. I saw guys do it, and I went like, oh, this is really efficient, and this is something I could do in my own life. And it's also about working on these ways to be efficient and preparing for this actively when you're at home and preparing for your flights. Not specifically for each flight, but when you have a time where you go, okay, I'm going to revise my procedures now, and I'm going to improve what do I do in case there is a de-icing? What do I do in case we are late and a passenger's been offloaded and we need to look for their bags? What happens in case of this and that? How do I get reorganized? What happens if I arrive at the airplane and the captain's not here? What am I going to do first? What am I going to do next? What happens if there's a change of runway when we are airborne? What happens if we're not getting the ATIS until late? All of these you can think of, and they will build your agility. Okay. It's knowledge from the books is only good when you build a skill to use it, and then we do it repeatedly. I say this very often in our videos when we present advanced interview courses, like knowledge, skill, practice the skill, become an expert. Okay, so you need to have this logic in order to improve. Okay.
Yeah, it seems like it's a lot of mental preparation too.
Yeah.
But I like how you said that you're openly asking the other person, did we forget anything? Because I think good CRM also comes into that the other person feels like, well, of course, this is about safety, but still you can create this psychologically safe environment for them to speak up, because that also goes against biases. Yeah.
Absolutely. You need to keep your colleague with you. It's not because time is scarce that you are going to disregard them. If time's getting scarce, you know that you're entering an area where lots of errors can be made. So you need that person. You can't lose them. They need to be active. There's a very few exceptions to that. Very, very few. One big exception to that is if you have an engine fire after takeoff. You have an engine fire after takeoff, but you will have rehearsed this and repeated this before every single flight, or at least once a day with a new person, at least once a day, what you are going to do in case of this. And you're going to say what you're going to do. In fact, you'll do it before every flight at a new airport as well. So typically before every flight, you're going to say what you're going to do, where you're going to go, what you expect the person to do. They're going to call ATC. They're going to tell ATC that we're turning in this direction, leveling off at this altitude. And you tell when you're a captain, well, that's actually what I did. I told the co-pilot, in this case, we are going to do it this way and that way and that way, and we're going to do it my way. If you think I'm making a big mistake, you'll tell me. Otherwise, we're going to do it this way. And at briefing, it's an opportunity for them to say something and say, well, actually, this altitude is not the right one, or we should turn the other way. And you go, oh, sure, okay. But now we've decided, once we're airborne, if it happens, that's the plan. Tell me if I'm making a big mistake. And if it would happen in real life, you would make that plan happen. And now the situation is so critical that, an airplane on fire with an engine fire, you don't have very many minutes to get down, that you're going to give orders. Do this, do that. Okay, talk to ATC. We're leveling off at 2,000 feet. Go downwind. I'm turning right. Tell them. And you're going to do this until you get to meet your goal, which is to bring this airplane back to the ground. There are very few situations like these. There are other situations, such as when you have smoke, where you are going to very quickly together, you're going to equip yourself, and very quickly you're going to find an airport where you could land, and then the cockpit will split, where the co-pilot typically will fly the plane towards this airport whilst you are alone with your checklist and with a cabin crew to try and find a way to stop this situation to happen, or at least to mitigate it the best you can. In this case as well, the CRM is there's no more CRM, because it's always a matter of what's the greatest threat. Okay.
Mhm.
In most situations, having a little bit of a drop in CRM is something we try to avoid all the time. But in some situations, like the ones I've explained, well, time is so scarce that then at the end of the day, you need to put this airplane back into safety. Okay.
Mhm. Yes, that's totally
It's
understandable.
very rare. Okay. So there's really, I can think of 2 cases where this would happen. There are not that many.
Okay. And do you think that, okay, well, when we are still talking about the biases, so, okay, we talked about how CRM can also help with it, but maybe do you think that, um, let me rephrase that. We
Yeah.
talked about CRM and how we can learn from the other person and from the environment. But do you think maybe there is another way to learn from how biases affect people? Maybe reading incident reports?
Well, I think your CRM training, your airline should do a good enough job of that with your CRM training, because during the CRM training, they will give you some theory about what happens with all of the biases, and then they are going to give you incident reports. In general, incident reports are really useful so long they are well explained and well debriefed. Okay, when an incident happens, a lot of people are going to give their opinion without the report even being issued. What I find very interesting, and that's deviating a bit from the actual incident reports, the big ones that everybody knows, is more of the more practical ones. Because the big ones, where you have an actual accident that happens, where an airplane will not be able to fly again, and maybe there'll be some injuries or worse. Of course, you can learn from that a lot. Often it's the holes in the Swiss cheese, that happened, and a superimposition of mistakes and omissions or oversight have happened and led to that. What we used to have is, and I think all airlines have, is a database where you can research for air safety reports. So air safety reports, if you're new to aviation and not yet a pilot, anytime on your flight something happens that is unusual, that is not ideal from a safety perspective, not necessarily safety was actually impacted, but it came close, or you can be what we call below the line. Below the line means that you're not in a safe situation. Maybe you're not aware of it, but nothing happens. It's like if you drive your car over a sheet of ice, you could very well drive straight and get to the other end of the ice patch. Okay, so it's not because it's unsafe that you are going to have an accident. But it happens very often in aviation and in our lives as pilots, that we go through a situation and we go like, okay, this was not ideal. It was below the line, or it was close to being below the line. I'm going to report it. And actually the airline will have a section at the end of their OMA, their Part A, the biggest document that documents SOPs for an airline, where it will say mandatory reportable occurrences. So if this and that happen, you have to write a report. And so we write reports quite often. It happens. Sometimes it's for nothing much. Sometimes it's for something a bit more major. Sometimes it could just be, I've filled reports for ATC vectoring us too tight, and seemingly not being aware that we were much heavier airplanes than the airplanes they had. And then they vectored us too tight, which almost resulted in a go around. This would be an ASR, okay? You can research these ASRs in the company database. So what was recommended by airline was, as you prepare for your flight the day before, you look at the weather, of course. You are going to study your aircraft chart, your airport chart, all of the NOTAMs, and you are going to go into this database and research for our airline, which have been the air safety reports that happened over the last few months, because they don't happen every day, okay? And you will have a good idea of what can go wrong at that airfield. Change of runways, poor ATC, dispatching issues, whatever it is. And this allows you to sort of get out of your bank of tools a few that are sort of ready there if you need to use them. Okay, such as that ATC can mislead you, they can give you the wrong QNH, that they are the weather can change very quickly, that the runways are there's problems with the runways, that taxiways are often closed that are not on the no times and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's quite important that we really listen to this new information. This was also in the article. So, dear listeners, if you would like to know more details about this, then you can go to our website and check it out. But this one, what we call the anchoring bias, this is also very important. That this is exactly what you just talked about now. That when we get one piece of information, let's say early in the flight, and then we get another information that changes how we should do things. But even if that new information it contradicts the old one, we just stick to this. So it's very important that we pay attention to these smaller biases,
Oh yeah.
and that we become aware that these are there. Because if we are not aware, then we cannot really work with it. So it's important.
Yeah, this
to
is when you
acknowledge
get
it.
tunneled, and when you get tunneled, usually the other pilot can see it. And if the other pilot sees that you're getting tunneled into a string of decisions that can be due to a confirmation bias or to something else. There are many biases that can come into you being tunneled and not seeing something else, and you just don't see what's outside. If the other pilot doesn't have enough resource, enough leadership to get you out of it and question you, ask you why are we doing this? I don't agree with this. I don't see things the same way that you do. I suggest we do it in a different way. If the other person doesn't know how to do that, well then, as the leader, the captain, where you're left alone with your tunnel, more or less. And if it's unsafe, then you could get below the line and nothing happens, or you could get below the line and sadly something will happen.
Mhm. Yeah, understandable. Well, Guillaume, to be honest, these were all my questions for
Okay.
today's episode. Is there anything that you would like
No.
to add? Because, okay, then I just have one question, and that is
Okay.
to you, dear listeners. And that would be, Guillaume, you have mentioned that there are certain things that go beyond a certain line. Well, hopefully you don't have stories about this, but we just want to ask you, maybe if you have a story about a call that felt right to you, but maybe it was a bias at work or anything connected to today's topic, we would like to ask you to send those stories to us. You can maybe post them on our Discord chat. We actually do have a group in that called Aviation Psychology. So maybe you can share those there, and then we can all learn from it.
Yes, and if you're worried about anonymity, because if you ever were below the line, and most of us have at some point, whilst nothing happened, and despite our best intentions, it happens. If you don't want this to be public, even with the way that we do our Discord, where it's just your first name and the first letter of your last name, what you can do is you can type into Discord any handle that has any username that has ASP in it. It's either myself, Stephanie, or right now at the moment of this recording, Hugo has it as well. And you can send us a PM. And what we'll do is that we'll post it anonymously for you, and we'll go, okay, a user reported that this situation could happen. So let's open the debate and see how this could have been managed in a different way. Okay, this is something we want to offer. Okay. And for you, it could be that this was traumatic. If there's something you didn't manage to speak up to a captain about, and that you're worried that this could actually turn into a really good example at the interview, by the way, because you will be asked at the interview, tell us a time where you were able to speak up to a superior, typically to your captain if you are a first officer. So this could turn into a really good example for you, and it could also be cathartic for you to be able to simply talk about it with people who are here to listen, typically us and all the other members that are on Discord.
Yeah. And I think if people share their stories, it would be also good to see that when others, it turns out that they have similar stories to you.
For sure. It happens, of course. That's exactly what will happen. Well, thank you so much, Dana. We're going to wrap up this episode, right? And see you in the next one. And as always, we're here to help you with your airline selection. We're here to help you grow as a pilot, but we are here primarily to help you with your airline selection, which is probably the biggest event that will happen in your pilot career, because it will start it. So you need to start before you can get the rest, right? So you know that Advanced Interview course is here for you. We are constantly making improvements to the course. We'd love to see you there and at one of our advanced interview practice sessions where we're there and we see you in small groups and we're able to get to know you and see you improve with our experts. So on that note, thank you, Dana, for being here today, and we'll see you next time.
Perfect. See you. Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by Airline Selection Program, a company that is focused on helping you succeed at airline selections. Our flagship course, Advanced Interview Course, has helped hundreds of pilots just like you become successful. Visit our website at online.airlineselectionprogram.com and find out how you too can get the job of your dreams.